Happy birthday! Yang joined in with the other voices as the small girl entered the hotel's function room. Streamers and balloons flew through the air, covering her blonde hair as the precious girl looked on in awe. Beside her, Ruby's teammate stepped aside, having been asked to distract her while they set it all up. Nora clapped loudly, cheering for the smaller girl she apparently become quite fond of. Ah, birthdays. Yang loved them, especially when they were family affairs like this. The little girl squealed in delight, rushing up to be hugged by her sisters and blushing as her mother leaned down to kiss her forehead. The scene was almost enough to make her sniff a little, but instead Yang settled for a watery smile. The scene was reminiscent of her own family, back when Summer had still been alive. From what she could remember, their mum had loved surprise parties too, transforming the house into some kind of colourful wonderland that took days to clean up. Things had changed when Summer passed, but each year their father would relive that tradition, pointing out that Summer had never missed one of their birthdays, and even now would be watching over them. He would joke that she'd never forgive him if he didn't doll up the house to match. Yang giggled, thinking on how Zui would try and help, inevitably getting tangled in tinsel and flying around the house in panic. That reminds me, I need to ask Dad about Jaune. She would need to talk to him tomorrow, making a quick visit back home before Beacon started. If their theory about Jaune was true, and given everything they knew it seemed to be, then her father would know more. He suffered through depression himself, twice if she recalled, yet he managed to come out of it each time. He'd have some advice for him, maybe some answers too. A quick glance showed that the other members of the team were doing okay, or at least surviving. Weiss was stood over by one wall, a glass in hand as she watched the display with an almost gentle smile. It was a stark contrast to Blake, who looked like she wanted to be anywhere else and had sequestered herself away in the only source of darkness in the room. The pink party hat she wore laughably out of place on her glowering face. Yang made sure to snap a quick picture of that, just for the teasing value. Jaune walked up to his little sister, handing over his present. It was something Weiss and her had helped him find. A silvery necklace that was simple in design, but also elegant. Weiss even funded him a little on it, saying that his sister deserved something that would last and that she could wear for years and years. Yang didn't miss the girl's wide eyes as she looked at it, nor the flash of awe and joy on her face. She also didn't miss how quickly that shifted into something less wholesome as she closed the box and turned away, ignoring her brother entirely. Yeesh. Yang sighed, rolling her eyes at the expression on their leader's face. Jaune didn't look hurt per se, but rather dreadfully confused. When it came to Beacon, I kind of expected it would be Ruby that I'd have to worry about being a social wreck. The irony was thick, especially since Ruby was giggling with Piero, the two of them listening to a story Jaune's father was telling them. Apparently he was a better storyteller than Port was. That didn't go as well as planned. Weiss said as she walked up to stand beside her. She liked the gift? Yang said. I saw that much. It was never about the gift. If it was, then she would not have been so difficult around Jaune for the week. From what I recall, they're leaving tomorrow. If he doesn't solve this now, then he will regret it. Yang wanted to ask if she was talking from experience there, but held off. Regrets were a line a dozen and nobody needed their own dragging up like that. Is that a hint of concern I detect in your voice? Yang teased instead. Weiss's eyes narrowed into icy slits. Is Mummy worried about her dearest husband? Repeating a joke over and over does not make it funny. Weiss snapped. That was enough to make Yang laugh. Didn't Weiss realize it was the sharp reaction she loved? Besides, my concern for Jaune is unprofessional in nature. I don't want him distracted or troubled when we return to Beacon. Yeah, sure. Yang waved a hand, chuckling when Weiss glared at her. I believe you, she promised. I believe you. Yeesh, Weiss screamed. The lady doth protest too much, no? Yang sighed. I'm worried too. With how he is, I don't think leaving things like this is a good idea. Weiss hummed in agreement. Should we involve Blake? Weiss shook her head. I think Blake is providing a valuable service at the moment. Yang looked over to see what the heiress meant, wincing guiltily when she saw Blake looking more than a little awkward, being addressed by Jaune's fiancé. The same fiancé who seemed all too okay with Jaune sleeping with various other women. The blonde seemed determined that Blake should sample him, which frankly wasn't a can of worms Yang wanted to open. Her sacrifice will be remembered. Yang pulled off a clumsy Atlas salute. Back to the main problem. Jaune isn't going to solve this on his own. He's too passive. I thought you were going to say lazy. Not with his family. Weiss shook her head. He seems more than motivated when it comes to them. I mean that he is too eager to please them. I don't think I've seen or heard him reject any suggestion they make. He dotes on them. Sounds like a perfect brother. Yang grinned, imagining what that would have been like. Oh man, she'd have totally taken advantage of an older brother with a sister complex. Brushing her hair, trips to go shopping, using his lap to fall asleep on, head massages, the list was endless. Having Ruby as a little sister was a blast, but it would be cool to have someone I could rely on like that. And if he were your little brother? Yang winced. The laziness, the fact that he got bullied, the way he slept around. Don't crush my dreams here, Weiss. Yang sighed, conceding the victory to the amused heiress. The point I was trying to make is that while Jaune doting on his sisters is nice, it doesn't enable him to stand up to or to challenge them. He's so eager to please that he won't push the issue of his youngest sibling, and so it will never be fixed. Yang sighed, catching onto Weiss's train of thought. It made sense. He was the perfect brother as far as she could see, but every now and then, you needed someone to tell you that you are wrong. He needs to stand up to her, Yang said, and she needs to stop being so stubborn. And that's where my inspiration ends, Weiss admitted. Identifying the problem is simple, I must admit, however. I don't have much experience in teenage rebellion. The white-haired girl winced, or rather, how to resolve it. Yang forced the curiosity down. That's where I come in, she said instead, clapping the smaller girl on the shoulder. Do me a favor and distract Jaune, okay? That should be more up your alley. I hope that's not another insinuation. Weiss glowered and walked off, approaching the young man. Jaune? Yang heard her snap. I need to talk to you about Beacon. This is going to be a new term and we need to start on a stronger footing than the last one. I propose we start training. Classic Weiss cream. Yang chuckled, pushing herself off the table she'd been leaning against and picking her way through the crowd. Nora and Ren were distracted, the latter looking horrified as Nora showed something to some of Jaune's sisters on her scroll, the girls cooing and laughing wildly. Pyrrha and Ruby must have reached a tense point in their tale, for their eyes were wide, mouths open as Nicholas Ark's hands moved dramatically. His wife sat nearby, listening contently as her husband entertained the two girls. He probably had practice in that. Blake, meanwhile, continued her worthy service, distracting Coral while trying to catch Yang's eye for help. Yang gave her a quick thumbs up and a grin, ignoring the wild-eyed signaling the girl sent back. Ah, Blake. What a partner. What a hero. Jaune's little sister was inspecting his gift to her when Yang came close. The 14, or rather 15-year-old girl, lifting up the lid to look at it when she thought no one was looking. It looks really good. Aren't you going to try it on? The girl slammed the case shut, glaring at Yang as she hid it behind her back. No? Yang grinned. Maybe you're waiting for your big brother to help you put it on. Amber's eyes flashed, teeth showing for a second as she growled silently. Yang wasn't deterred, however. When you fought against the Grim on a regular basis, the glares of other people lost their effect. Besides, she was going to push where Jaune wouldn't. You don't have long, you know. You're going back home tomorrow, and Jaune needs to get to Beacon the same day. We've got to be back on Sunday evening in preparation for the classes on I know. Small, tense and quiet, it was progress nonetheless. It's going to be at least a couple of months before you can see him again. Yang continued. Not to mention, being a huntsman is a dangerous job. You should take the chance to talk to him before— Shut up! Yang paused as the girl hissed the words. Just shut up. Well, I don't mean to be a bitch. She shrugged. It's just life isn't always fair or easy. If you keep putting things off, then bad things can happen. Jaune nearly got killed at the docks, you know. It could have been worse. He got hurt because of you. The girl snapped, and for a moment Yang's heart froze. Because of you hunters and him having to be one. I know damn well what the risks are. My dad's a huntsman too, and he makes sure we know. Right. She means us as a team. For a moment I thought she knew about the club. Don't talk to me like you understand what I'm going through. Amber continued. What we're going through, or even what Jaune is going through. He's my big brother and I know him better than you do. You don't understand anything. You're right. The girl blinked, anger draining out of her as Yang sighed. She wanted to argue that point, to say she knew what it was like to lose someone, but that wasn't the same. Summer had known the risk and made the choice. Jaune, as much as she didn't dare admit it, had only become a hunter because he had been forced into it, because of her stupidity. You're right when you say I don't understand, Yang said. No one else is going to, since it's your life and your feelings. I'm not going to pretend to know about your life, in the same way you don't know about mine. But what I do know is what it's like to suddenly not have any more opportunities to tell people how you feel. I know what it's like to take something for granted and then suddenly find that it's not there anymore. That it would never be there. I know what it's like to spend your life wondering if you should have said or done something differently. Yang sighed, pushing her blonde hair back. It sucks, she said plainly. Don't make the same mistakes that I did. It's not. Amber hesitated. It's not that easy. Maybe it isn't. Yang shrugged. Maybe you're in the right and he's in the wrong. Trust me. I've spent a few months with your brother. He's wrong a lot. The small girl giggled lightly at that. But even if he's done something bad and messed up, we both know he's the kind of idiot who doesn't know how to fix that. You're going to have to be the bigger person, even if you shouldn't have to be. Winning is nice. So is having the moral high ground. But it's a lonely place. Yang reached out to touch the girl's shoulder, smiling when she didn't pull away. I don't know about you, Amber, but I'd rather be down there with all the other losers, laughing and having fun with my life. Think about it a little, eh? Meanwhile, she could think about why she was here offering advice to her teammate's 15-year-old sister and not her own. Hadn't Beacon been her opportunity to get away from all that? He so owes me a night out drinking for this. Maybe we can even end it without getting arrested, crushing bullheads or burning down any buildings. Huh. Come to think of it, her team was really messed up. Is there any reason you're trying to distract me, Weiss? The words cut into Weiss, a mistake that would have proved fatal in any other situation. Her partner had chosen his moment well, however, interrupting a training plan she didn't care for implementing. Plus, he was correct in his accusation. You repeated that first training plan for the third time, he pointed out. That's unlike you. I didn't. Weiss blinked. Wait, you were actually listening? Was I supposed to not to? You were supposed to, but I didn't actually expect you to, Weiss freely admitted. I'm now debating on whether you've been killed or replaced with some highly intelligent form of grim life. And what's your conclusion? Jaune grinned loop-sidedly. She took great pleasure in shooting it down. That I'm not convinced it would be necessarily a bad thing. Hilarious. He deadpanned. But that doesn't answer my question. First, a pointless training talk and now you're actually telling jokes. And what right did he have to sound so amazed at that? She could tell jokes if she wanted to. Can we not beat around the bush for a change? I can't believe you of all people are saying that to someone. You practically defined the term at this point. There was no use delaying, however. But fine. I am distracting you. Yang is currently talking to your little sister for you. She doesn't have to. Jaune sighed, only to stop as Weiss held her palm out. She stopped him. Somebody has to do something since it's clear you won't. If Yang wishes to show her appreciation for you by helping you, then you should be grateful for it. Does the fact that you're technically helping tell me that you appreciate me too? Weiss didn't respond with words, but instead, accidentally, bumped his arm with her own, causing him to spill a little lemonade on himself. Okay, point taken. So good to see you can be trained. Why haven't you said something to your sister though? Jaune seemed to deflate a little at that, the previous good mood between them evaporating. It's complicated. He sighed. Amber is... She's... Honestly, I'm so surprised you've been so lenient with her. I've expected you to storm over and have words. Weiss raised an eyebrow at his obvious deflection, but knew better than to ask. In the time she'd been forced to spend with him, she had come to know he could be a masterful deflector if he felt the need. If a man who would taser his opponent's crotch when pushed into a corner didn't want to speak about something, then he didn't keep asking. Maybe I saw a little bit of myself in her. Weiss said. Are you telling me you were ever like Amber? She flushed, looking away for a moment in embarrassment before remembering that was neither here nor there. I was young once, she defended. Back when she'd been spoiled and attention-seeking, often starved for it because of her father and the work he had to do. Weiss sighed, not meeting his eye as she continued. For the longest time, it was my sister and I, with her being friend, confidant, and sibling all in one. I know what it's like to watch your older sibling go on some dangerous missions and wonder if they will ever come back. Jaune watched her, for once not with his typical apathetic gaze, but rather something else. It made her feel awkward. I don't know why that's such a big deal. She pushed on. Children worry all the time and I was no different. Your sister's concern just speaks of how much she cares for you. Why would I criticize such a thing? Sorry. He laughed, waving his shoulder in surrender. The sight made her pause, to take it in for a moment. It was strange to imagine that so much had changed in so short a time. Not 3 weeks ago she would have called their relationship cold at best. He had refused to listen to her, to train or to even interact as a team leader. Yet now here they were, trying to help him out with his family because in some unusual way they had come to, dare she say it, care for him. And where she would have before said he considered them a nuisance at best, she could not confidently claim he felt the same, in his usual, twisted way. Idiot. She said, uncertain of whom she was referring to. You're going to be absolutely useless at Beacon unless this thing of your sister is sorted out. As your partner, I am ordering you to do something about it. But I'm the team leader, and that doesn't matter. She slapped a hand across his chest. Apologize to your sister, admit that you are wrong, whatever it is you've done, and bring this to an end. And how am I supposed to do that? He asked. I'm not even sure what it is I've done in the first place. Or rather, I've tried to apologize for what I think it is. Then clearly, Weiss said slowly, you didn't apologize for the right thing. Really? Do I have to explain everything to you? Ruby was looking more and more like she should have been the better choice of partners. At least she seemed to have had her head screwed on properly. A woman, no, anyone, isn't going to accept an apology if you are giving it for the wrong thing. You need to apologize for what is truly bothering them. But I don't know what that is. Then ask them. Weiss said, eyes looking towards the ceiling for divine inspiration. How difficult do you want to make this? No one is telling you to have the answer to every one of life's questions. If you're not sure what it is you've done to offend someone, then sit down Ask them and then apologize for it. Just ask? He looked so confused that it might have been adorable had it not been so stupid. Don't I have to try and figure out what I did wrong myself? If you wanted to wait for that, then she'd be an old crone by the time you figured it out. He kept looking at her. Weiss rolled her eyes. Yes, Jaune, it's that simple. Really. You act as though people want to be trapped in arguments all the time. She might call you an idiot. She might even say you're a moron for not figuring it out. And she might be right about all those things. But in the end, she'll tell you and then you can consider what she says and decide what to do. It was a lesson she had to learn as much as any other person. The Schnee household was not one that would have traditionally been seen as full of love. Sometimes it was hard to tell if there was any affection at all, unless you asked. You make it sound so simple, he said. You make it sound so hard, she replied. He laughed. You're right. I guess I'll have to go and talk to her. Any ideas on how I should apologize? You would know more than I what she likes. Weiss said, rolling her eyes. I'm not here to explain every little thing to you. Why not play her a song with what limited guitar skills you actually possess? Weiss normally wasn't one for regrets. She made a lot of mistakes. She knew that. But for the most part she'd gone back and addressed those in quest for perfection. The way Jaune's eyes lit up, however, when she threw that not-so-veiled barb at him, that she regretted. I was joking. No. He shook his head with a grin. That's a great idea. Wait here. I'll be right back. No, it's not. He managed to escape her grip before she could throttle him. She heard his ability on the guitar before back in initiation. She could only call it an ability because Beacon was a school for hunters. Anything that could be weaponized in such a soul-destroying manner deserved her respect. She just didn't respect it enough to submit herself to it once more. Hey, ice cream. Yang greeted, strolling up to her with Blake in tow. The poor faunus looked like she recently discovered religion. That or salvation. Presumably Yang had taken pity on her and rescued Blake from that perverted fiancé. A shame then that Weiss had doomed them all. What's with the long face? Ruby asked, having followed her sister. Weiss turned to face them. It felt like she was the lowly intern who had accidentally hit the self-destruct button on a military base and now had to explain to her colleagues why the lights were flashing. I may have miscalculated, she said slowly. Jaune is going to entertain his sister with a guitar solo. That's nice. Iris smiled. Is he any good? There was a reason the redhead stopped, and it wasn't because of anything they said. It was because her partner, Ruby Rose, had promptly pulled her hood up and started to tie it as tight as she could, cutting off her ears and a good portion of her face. A quick glance at Blake showed she was adjusting her bow too, tightening it with a wince. Pyrrha sighed. I suspect that answers my question. Jaune ignored his friend as he re-entered the function room. While the displays were amusing, he had something else he had to deal with first. Weiss was right in her roundabout way. He'd been running away from the problem between Amber and him, even though he should have addressed it immediately. His parents had tried to help, pushing them together where possible. His sisters had done the same, with Coral being the one to finally draw his attention to it fully. In the end, it had taken his team to fully force him into action, however. It shouldn't have. He should have been the big brother he was supposed to be. Interacting with people was hard. It was also much easier when the only people you cared to talk to was the 7 people you'd known for hundreds of years. He didn't need to wonder what Ruby meant when she said something. He didn't need to read deeper into Pyrrha's comments, be it anger, happiness, sorrow, or even despair. He knew them better than they knew themselves. But Amber, his poor sister who deserved better, was someone he'd known for only a little over 2 years. 2 years of probably more than 1,000 years of war and death. That didn't excuse his actions. It was simply the reason for them. The rest of the family started to go quiet as he strolled up, taking a seat on the edge of the table as he rested the instrument in his lap. The neutral silence caused by that was enough to have the birthday girl look his way. if only to see what else everyone else was staring at. His fingers strummed across the strings. "This is a song," he said quickly, before Amber could find a way to ignore him, "that I wrote for my little sister." There were calls of "Aw" from his family. It's called, "I'm sorry I messed up. I'm an idiot. Please forgive me." The name caught her off guard, along with the rest of his family, as he took a deep breath and hit the first note. Such was his skill and technique that the note didn't survive the blow. The sound that came out of the instrument couldn't be called music. It was noise and nothing more than an amalgamation of bum notes and discordant twangs that had his old friend Ren reeling back in shock. That didn't stop him as he opened his mouth to sing, "I'm an idiot, and I messed up, I'm sorry. I'm a moron, and I probably should have said something, but I'm an idiot." The lyrics went on, not ones he planned in advance really. Just words and apologies, the music to which played a horrific accompaniment as he humiliated himself before the audience. "Make it stop," Ruby whined loudly, cradling her ears. "Weiss, kill him," Yang howled dramatically. "It's so honest and passionate," Nora clapped along. "I like it." At least someone seemed to like it, he thought. The guitar certainly didn't, sounding like some dying animal being tortured. Just for the effect, he ended on a high wail, vibrating the string with a finger to ensure the kneeling noise lasted as long as possible, long after his throat gave way and his voice cracked, ending the song with a croak. His family stared at him, mouths open. They at least knew he could play, unlike his friends, so they no doubt expected something resembling a tune. Amber stared at him the hardest, the frustration on her face replaced by shock and a little embarrassment. Her cheeks were red. But the smothered snort that came from between her lips was a positive sign. The girl fought against it, shoulders shaking as she tried to hold it in, before she burst out in laughter. Nicholas sighed. "That was unique, son." "One way of putting it," Coral drawled. Their scorn didn't affect him, however. Amber, on the other hand, found it hilarious, nearly bending double as she saw the pained expressions of his friends from Beacon, mirrored by Lavender, who had for once in her life seemed unable to pretend she enjoyed something. Jaune put the guitar down, mindfully making sure it was nowhere near his friends from Beacon, as he walked up to kneel before his sister. "Forgive me?" Her arms slammed around his shoulders. "You're an idiot." She giggled into his chest, though even though the laughter he could hear the high-pitched tone, could feel the moisture of tears. Only 2 years ago he had no idea what to do when she cried on him, but this time his arms closed around the girl, drawing her up into his lap. He steadfastly ignored his team, the way Weiss nodded and Yang cooed and took pictures. He even ignored the expression on his old partner's face, which for the first time in this new life looked at him with newfound appreciation. Instead, he moved the two of them away from the crowd, so they could sit alone. Amber didn't resist. "Were you angry at me for not getting expelled from Beacon?" Jaune asked, stroking her back. "I did try, Amber. It was just that I couldn't let my teammate die." "I wasn't angry at that." She sniffed into his chest. "Then what were you angry about?" I wasn't angry about anything," she sobbed. "I was trying to help you." "What?" "I heard how you got stuck because you had to help your friends," she went on, "and I thought it might help you if I pretended to hate them all. I thought it would give you a chance to pretend you had to spend time with your spoiled sister, that you could avoid them and not have to worry about it. I thought I was helping you." Jaune's eyes closed, biting back a curse. But instead you didn't." Amber whimpered. "You avoided me. I didn't know what to do when I was scared. I wanted to tell you I was just pretending and that I wasn't angry, but then you started to look at me like I was a stupid child, and I did get angry. I'm sorry, Amber. And I just didn't talk to you all week. I wasted all the time we could have spent together because I was too afraid to admit I was wrong and I made a mistake." "You didn't make a mistake," Jaune said, stroking her back. "I should have talked to you. If I just told you it wasn't necessary, then you wouldn't have felt you needed to act like that." This was what Coral had meant then, when she cornered him before. She'd accused him of being cruel to his sisters. She must have been referring to this, how he made Amber think he needed her help, only to leave her locked in the thankless task. It was silly of her, childish too, but the effort hadn't been born of malice. She had genuinely believed she was helping him, that he needed her help, and by ignoring her, he had as good as said he was choosing them over her. "All of this could have been avoided if I've just talked to you," he said, "so I don't want to hear you saying it's your own fault anymore." It could have if I talked to you too, but you were just 14 at the time. Jaune poked her nose with his finger. "I'm the big brother. I'm older. And as old as I am, you really think I'd know enough not to ignore a problem? He'd been distracted by other things, by beacon any stress over at what was to come. But again, that was no excuse. This life was supposed to be for them, for his family. But he'd spent the whole week thinking about nothing more than himself. Coral was right to accuse him of cruelty towards them. His selfishness had been as much. But regretting that wouldn't fix anything. It would only make them all feel worse. "Here." He grinned, stealing something from behind her back. "Turn around and let me put this on you. It's too pretty to sit in a box all day." "Okay." Amber giggled, shifting around in his lap so he could pull her hair back. "You're growing your hair out?" he asked, marveling at the length. "You're going to look like Sapphire used to if this keeps up." "I like Sapphire's hair," Amber pouted. "It looked pretty." "And you'll look beautiful too," Jaune promised, scaring the silver chain around her neck. "Soon I'll be beating the guys off with a sword." "You mean a stick, right?" Jaune continued laughing. "Let's go dance," he finally said, lifting her up and drawing her towards the center of the room. It would be their last night together, possibly their final night ever, if things went poorly. Even if it didn't matter, even if his little sister wouldn't remember it, he would make sure it was one filled with happy memories. "You still haven't said you won't kill any of my future boyfriends." "No," Jaune agreed. "I haven't.